Where do you get your ideas?
I would say newspaper stories are probably my #1 sort of source. My first book, First Light, the whole setting came from a New York Times Magazine article about a scientist who was working in the Arctic. And I just loved sort of the idea of camping on an ice cap, what that would feel like, what would the fun parts be, what would the hard parts be, would it seem exciting but then turn out to be boring? The setting sort of generated a lot of ideas, and that all came from a newspaper article.
How do you decide the narrator's voice?
Voice is something I think about a lot. It's sort of the way a book talks to you. Sometimes you can read a book that's sort of very removed, like there's sort of a fairy tale quality, or you know that you're being told a story, kind of. And sometimes a book feels much more immediate. It's written in the first person, and it's full of, sort of a tumult of thoughts as if you're inside someone else's brain. And sometimes there's a mix, sometimes you're hopping from head to head, and whatever sort of path you end up on is sort of what I call voice. It doesn't refer really to the voice of any particular character. It's sort of about the experience of the story. That is really one of the very hardest things to do, is to finally decide, how is the story going to be told?
How do you develop a story?
I am not an outliner. People say there are plotters and there are plungers. And a plotter plots out the story ahead of time and knows what he or she is going to write. And a plunger just goes and, just waits to see what's going to happen. And I am a plunger, so I don't really want to know what's going to happen in the story. I may know a few things, so I think my method is to carry paper, to try not to get frustrated, to try to pay attention to what's around me. I'm always looking for inspiration, and to basically respect every little spark of an idea I have, because I've learned that if you dismiss, ideas, sometimes it's a long time before you have another one. So sometimes my method is sort of like gathering up little pieces of dust, and trying to put them together and, make something out of them. And it requires patience.
What makes a good story?
The best part about writing is sort of surprising yourself. So I don't plan my stories. I always want to have secrets in my books. I want there to be revelations. If any of my books, basically, if you start them and you think you know what's going on, chances are that you don't. And that's what I love in a story. I love to be surprised by a story, but I also want it to feel honest. I want it to feel truthful. I don't want it to feel artificial or flat, or about characters that don't have depth and faults and real feelings and dark feelings. That always has to exist in a story.
What advice do you have for young writers?
My advice for young people who are writing is, they've heard it before, read. Reading is #1. It is the best, most fun, entertaining, amazing education for writers that is possible. You can read about writing, you can have people show you how to outline or how to revise, but there is nothing like sort of the model and the inspiration that reading provides.